The chaos of private schools closing, the chaos of any school closing, causes a problem in a child's education. So, is that any less significant when that child is going to a private school or when that child is going to a state school? That child's education is still compromised by the bureaucracy um, of the bank balance and the failing school system. And this is the educational equivalent of a slow motion car crash. The Labour government's introduction of VAT on private school fees, and it's been barely a fortnight since the 20% levy was slapped on tuition fees, and already three private schools, Madewell Hall, Amherst School, Chaffin, have closed in the last week, I think, and citing financial pressures. And the most recent casualty on top of these is Godolphin Prep, a school that has nurtured children since 1993, now reduced to a poignant footnote in educational history. Charging £12,196 per annum for girls aged 3 to 11, Godolphin Prep announced its impending closure, blaming declining pupil numbers and the financial impossibility of maintaining educational quality in, quote, this new climate. And the closure follows hot on the heels of Madewell and Amherst, both venerable institutions where trustees were forced to bow to the grim arithmetics of VAT, rising operational costs, plummeting enrolments, business fees, and there's another one which has escaped my mind for the moment. Yes, employer national insurance contributions. The consequences of these closures extend far beyond the schools themselves, and it doesn't matter if you think that private education should be ring-fenced with further taxes. Maybe, but they should be introduced in a way that is not in a way that is fair, as any tax should be introduced. This knee-jerk introduction of tax under Rachel Reeves is simply sending shockwaves through the system, not only education but other parts of our society, and people are voting with their feet. There's a very entertaining article in the Financial Times today saying that people are no longer consider Britain the best place to get divorced. But the consequence of these closures extend far beyond schools. Pupils at Godolphin could transfer to Chaffin Grove, but even this apparent safety net reveals deeper issues. Chaffin Grove's governors ominously warned that the position of standalone prep schools is now particularly precarious. And Julie Robertson of the Independent Schools Council echoes this sentiment, predicting a domino effect of closures, redundancies, and disrupted education. But it doesn't end there. The state sector, already stretched thinner than a budget airline seat, is bracing for an influx of displaced pupils. Over 3,000 private school pupils applied to join state schools between June and September 2024. Even if Rachel Reeves said that isn't and Bridget Phillipson said this isn't a number that they recognise, they were registered, and thousands more are expected to follow. This is not just an educational crisis, it's a logistical nightmare. And the Treasury assures us that this policy will raise £1.8 billion annually, funding 6,500 new teachers. Admirable, perhaps, but the human cost, the job losses, the educational disruption, the collapse of smaller community-based institutions, community-rooted schools that are providing employment for many people in that local area. Even Labour insiders admit contingency plans are in place for a surge in state school enrolments, a tacit acknowledgement that the thorough and careful analysis underpinning this policy might have been more optimistic than realistic, and that the careful analysis was something much closer to a sort of Liz Truss cursory read-through. Critics argue that closures are nothing new. Indeed, an average of 80 private schools closed annually over the last decade, but this misses the point. The VAT hike compounds existing financial strains, targeting precisely those smaller, less affluent schools that lack the buffer of large endowments or elite reputations, or indeed the the clientele, the elite clientele. Schools like Loughborough, Amherst, which struggled for years to break even, now find survival mathematically impossible. And at the heart of this issue lies a philosophical clash. Progressives champion inclusivity and structural reform, viewing private education as an emblem of inequality. Conservatives, meanwhile, argue that private schools relieve pressure on the state sector and promote excellence. Somebody sending their children to a private school is already paying tax, and then paying again. So they're paying twice for education. Both perspectives contain truths, but Labour's approach, imposing financial constraints without adequate state sector preparation, feels like a policy in haste and repentance at leisure. And the irony, a policy designed to level the playing field may end up undermining it. Bursaries for poorer students are being slashed. State schools, already grappling with underfunding and staff shortages, must now absorb an influx of pupils whose parents can no longer afford private fees. The promise of 6,500 new teachers feels woefully inadequate against the backdrop of this upheaval. What happens next? More closures, more redundancies, more questions about the sustainability of this policy. Critics like Kemi Badenoch pledged to reverse the VAT hike if elected, framing it as emblematic of Labour's disregard for middle-class families. Meanwhile, local authorities scramble to find space for displaced pupils, and private schools eye land sales to offset ballooning tax bills. In the words of Julie Robinson, the VAT tax hike is a bridge too far. It threatens to dismantle a vital part of Britain's educational ecosystem, leaving both private and state sectors in disarray. While Labour's intentions may have been noble, the execution is alarmingly short-sighted and hasty. If the government doesn't rethink its approach, we risk turning the classroom into the next battlefield of Britain's culture wars. And that won't be pretty. I think we're already committed to that particular route. And there will be casualties. And the casualties will turn out much the same as the casualties in Theresa May's hostile environment. The students who have already committed to an education in one particular school may find that they're suddenly uprooted in the middle of an exam year. Their exams go astray, their future is compromised. Why? Because of some stupid ideology. And why do I mention Theresa May? Because her obsession with the hostile environment, in my own experience, led to at least 3 students who'd come to Britain to study in Britain, in the education system in Britain, found that their visas were curtailed just as they were getting into the upper sixth. In other words, just as they were about to do their Oxford exams, their Cambridge exams, and interviews, and that was messed up for them. You can't recover that sort of nonsense. Their A-levels, in each of those cases, their A-levels also suffered. And it's not about paying for education. It's about investing in a child's stability and security. And if we can't offer that, education in a British school is a waste of time. So if classroom sizes are going to increase further because of the accommodation of private school students in the state system, that is further going to put a strain on textbooks, teachers' time, and the sheer logistics of more children in a school. And that is unfair, not only on the children who are displaced, but on the children who are already securely and comfortably studying in whatever state school happens to be there. This is a wrecking ball to education. You cannot use education as a social convenience and to adjust the problems in society. Education is there to educate a child. If you want to use education for social mobility, for some sort of grand scheme, then it has to be done slowly, and it has to be done over a period of about 7 years, 5 to 7 years, which is an educational timescale. Do it quicker, and you risk disaster.